Morning, everyone.
Morning. There we go.
Good morning, this is Don. Can you hear me?
I can
Yes.
hear you. I can hear you.
Excuse me.
Get a little chilly this morning.
Yeah.
33, I think.
Yeah.
Nice and sunny now.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay. Guess everybody's recovered from the town halls last night. I'm looking forward to when I don't have to watch any more political ads. I can't wait just for a plain old Procter & Gamble detergent commercial.
Okay, good morning.
Morning, Sue.
I'm moving slowly today, but at least I'm moving. Okay, let's you two start your video.
There you are. You're back.
Okay, all right. So is everybody on?
I think we're still missing a few. I know Oz will be on, and Hans. I don't see Hans yet. And the mayor.
Or Bob Prost.
Bob will not. Bob is not able to attend.
Okay.
Well, do we want to go ahead and start? We know the mayor is able to come on.
I assume so. Bob, do you know if the?
I didn't hear, so I don't know. But I would say let's go ahead. It looks like Oz is getting connected down there.
Okay,
Yeah,
there he
okay.
is.
All right, well, let me look at my phone and see what time. All right, it is good, 8:34. I would like to call this Ways and Means Commission meeting of Friday, October 16th to order. And Mr. Sheldon, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Miss Weber? See her?
She's here.
Mr. Aiken?
Here.
Mr. Conrad? See Oz, you're muted. Mr. Goldberg?
Here.
Mr. Frederickson looks like he's absent. Mr. Wishlinski, present, he's muted. Mr. Prost is absent. Mr. Roberts,
Here with my Starbucks.
all righty, here,
Lucky.
caffeinated. And Mr. Perot.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone coming. Good morning. And we have some work to do. So I believe you've all had the opportunity. The minutes were emailed out. Do we have any additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay, looks like seeing none. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move the approval.
We had a motion by whom? Who was it Mr. Aiken? Did you?
Yes.
Okay, and second? Okay,
Second.
okay, thank you. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye or thumbs up. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, as far as the selection of
Excuse me,
vice
Madam
chair-
Chairman,
I'm sorry, yes.
would you just, we'll just note for the minutes that Hans Frederickson has joined us.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Oz. I don't have you on my screen, but, okay. Good, and he's still muted, okay. So, on the agenda, okay, and Hans, we did just approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Great.
Okay, we have on the agenda selection of vice chairman for Ways and Means. I have gotten a couple very nice comments that people of a couple people who are not interested in that. So we so far don't have someone who has stated they'd like to do that or be willing to do that. So we can readdress this, but for today's meeting, can we go ahead and dispense with that and move on? Does anyone have any concerns with that? Okay, we will do that. All right, so we have a great amount of information to cover, actually, reviewing our budget for 2021. Pam has put together a lot of information. We had similar information at the work session at the board this past week, and it went well, I believe. But what we did was ask people to keep your comments so that she can get through the presentation, and then we'll come back. That was a suggestion from Mr. Conrad, and it did go well. So we'll start off when you want to go ahead and proceed, Pam.
Sure. What I'd like to do is quickly go through the presentation that I gave to the board on Monday. I added in just a couple new slides for you, just to give you a little bit more detail. But then we can go through the different, as you like, we'll go through whatever detail you'd like to see. Excuse me. So give me a second while I remember how to share my screen. Excuse me. Here we go. Okay. So I wanted to start off as we normally do, talking about the goals of the budget. And most of you have been through the budget process before, and you know that our goal, at least with the general fund, has always been to have a structurally balanced budget. And the difference, I want to just go over a couple definitions here. That a budget is balanced legally if your fund balance plus your revenues are equal to or greater than your estimated expenditures. A structurally balanced budget is when your revenues are greater than or equal to your current year revenues and your current year expenditures balance out. So what we've always tried to do in the past with the general fund is have a structurally balanced budget. So what that leads to is just not eating into fund balance every year. So obviously the 2021 goal, that's not possible. So our budgets are going to be balanced, meaning we're not, of course, deficit spending, but we will be using fund balance. So the goal this year was really to have budgets to keep the budgets as low as possible while still maintaining our critical services to the community with a focus on health, safety, and the maintenance of our infrastructure. We don't want to not spend money today only to have to turn around, tomorrow and spend more because we've let things slide to the point where we have to spend more. So goals shifted just a little bit this year. Process is still the same. And as you know, this is really the first budget presentation to you to review. The departments created the budgets. The budgets were reviewed by myself and the assistant finance director to try and make sure that everything was that they were all complete, that everything was in it, that they just kind of from the outset compared to other years looked reasonable. Then the budgets were reviewed with the city administrator and then the mayor, and now it's coming to you for your review. We will continue to update the numbers in the budget. I have here until the end of October, but we can still make changes later. What I don't want to do is make changes after we've put basically the presentation and the numbers together for the Board of Aldermen unless they initiate some changes. Now, if there are major changes that need to happen, we can obviously still do those before the budget is finally approved in December. So our next meeting for the Ways and Means to go, if you need it after today to review the budget more, will be November 5th. And then the Board of Aldermen real work session on the budget is the 9th. And then the public hearing and first read will be November 23rd with the finalization of the budget, hopefully on December 14th. So some of the assumptions going into this, our loss of sales tax is about, almost 1.5 million. That's compared to the 19 actual, not our assumption for 2020. Our assumption was that we would bring in more sales tax in 2020 compared to 19. But just comparing the sales tax to the 2019 actual, the latest estimate is the 1.4 million. Now we have received the October distribution from the state and from the county. I have those numbers. They're not part of this evaluation because I haven't analyzed them yet. But this number will get a little bit better. Our decrease now in the general fund for the sales tax receipts for the general sales tax and it shows that we're down almost 3% for the year. So that's significantly better than where we anticipated we would be at this point. but I will be looking at that more carefully, looking at each kind of category of business to see kind of what direction the businesses are heading. And of course, what's happening now, and any numbers that we have, the October numbers are really just what's been collected through the end of August. So a little bit behind, as you know. I anticipate, I guess, another 800 and some thousand in additional sales tax, not loss as much as reduction for 2021 compared to the 2019 budget. So really what this means is I don't think we're going back to normal soon. I think we'll be well into 2021 before our sales tax comes back to where it was in 2019. And of course, all of that is based on, or based on the assumption again, that we don't have a second wave or a third wave or whatever you want to call it of issues where and problems where we would have any kind of new shutdown. On the positive side, the grant from the County Cares Municipal Relief Program looks like we will receive $743,000 from the county. We have submitted our request to the county, and our request is for just over, I think it was over 800,000. So we are fairly confident that we will receive this money before the end of the year. We've also included a salary increase of 1.5% for all employees who are not on a STEP plan. So those who already are going to be receiving steps based on their position will not receive the additional 1.5%. And really those are police officers and sergeants. They go through a STEP plan. The fire and EMS contract, I just got that actually this morning for 2021. That of course only assumes the CPI increase, which was 0.6% for 2021. And we take that the CPI as of July 1st. So a little bit of a break for next year. In the out years that I've done, 2022 and 2023, trying to estimate costs, I have not figured in anything for the change in the contract or a new contract or whatever is going to happen. I've just plugged in the CPI increases, since at this point, we don't know what we're going to be doing with that contract. The 2021 figures that you'll see already include benefit increases and insurance increases. And we did receive a surplus distribution back from West County Dispatch in 2020 for the $24,000. That's not showing up on your screen, is it? Don't know why. And that's the benefit of being, excuse me, in this consortium. Oh, now it's there. It's a little slow. Okay, so this is kind of our standard overview of all funds, looking at our estimated 2021 beginning fund balance, adding in the estimated revenues for 2021, subtracting out the current recommended budget, showing any transfers in and out, change in fund balance, and then the ending fund balance. And as you can see, we have a lot of negatives there in the change in the fund balance column that we normally wouldn't see. Still at the end of 2021, we're estimating a fund balance ratio of about 60%. Looking at the revenues, and this is just by fund again, So the revenue losses from the 2019 actuals to the 2020 estimates. So you can see what I'm estimating the decreases will be. And the majority of that is sales tax, but not all of it. I think we've talked a little bit about that before. And what I want to point out is we're just looking at the revenues without any grants in there. We don't, I just wanted to show you kind of the basic revenues. The grants vary from year to year. And of course, the 2020 would be skewed because of the county grant. So without any grants, these are the reductions in revenue that I see from the 2019 to the 2020 estimate. And then looking again at the 2021 estimates, revenue estimates, and comparing them to the 2020 estimate, you can see I have plugged in some growth. Most of that again with the sales tax coming back, hopefully, more towards middle to end of 2021, being back to more of a normal level. And then the change from, but still looking at then going back and looking at and comparing 19 to 2021, you can see that we still are, over $1.5 million below where we were back in 19, even in 2021. On the expenditure side, so I wanted to look first at the 2020 budget compared to the 2020 estimate, where we think our expenditures are going to be at the end of 2020. So we talked about cutting out projects, reducing costs. So this shows what we think that we will not do in 2020 that was budgeted. So that's almost $2.5 million worth of projects and a little bit of other cutbacks that we could do. And then comparing the 2021 draft budget to the 2020 estimate, you can show we are going back up a little bit in the general fund, and that's because of some of the things that we've already talked about, the salary increase, the contract for EMS and fire, plus any other contracts that we have. The road projects, some of the projects that were deferred in 2020 are now in 2021, along with the other projects that were already earmarked for 2021. Same with the Parks and Stormwater Fund. Getting down to starting with the general fund. Sure, I'll keep up to date in case I had some notes that I wrote in here. So as I just said, we reduced the 2020 budget expenditures by about $200,000. We are adding in the CARES grant, and my estimate for ending fund balance with the CARES, assuming we get the CARES grant, will be 7.6 million, or about almost 74% fund balance to expenditure ratio. If we don't get the CARES grant for whatever reason, that drops down to 6.9, and we end up with about 66.5%. Moving out forward, then looking at the end of 2021 fund balance, as I said before, I assume we'll have about 1.6 million, or 60%. Without the CARES grant, it would be 53%. So still within our 50% limitation. However, moving out to 2023, estimating a fund balance of 4.2 million, which is 38%. Without the CARES grant money, it would be 3.4 or 31%. So this, of course, all assumes, again, that we have no new revenues, that we have some growth in the sales tax, not growth in 2021, but growth in 2022 and 2023. Expenditures remain flat, except for those costs that kind of have to go up. And keeping really intact some of the cuts that we've already done. And I think I have those identified a little bit on here. So some of the reductions that have carried into 2021 from 2020. So we've kept the overtime down. We haven't eliminated it, but trying to keep it down as low as possible. Brought back just a minimal training, things that we think are absolutely necessary, but have reduced some of those. We've reduced some of the hosting of meetings and community gatherings, the community coffees, which I think was one of the topic, or the kind of the title of the meetings that the mayor was holding, kind of town hall meetings. Those would be reduced. Trying to reduce some other contractual support, legal publications in the court reporter, we would keep those at a minimum. We would not go back to printing the newsletter. We would continue to do that electronically, but we have budgeted for a couple one-page type flyers, postcards to go out to all citizens. We'll hold vacancies open a little bit longer than we normally would. And again, no branch chipping. So just more of a different view for those who'd rather see kind of lines than numbers. This is what my projections look like. You know, this starts in 2018 and goes out to 2023. The bottom line is our fund balance. And you can see where we started in 2018 at 81%, bumped up a little bit in 19, and then 20 down to 74, 2021, 60, 59, and 38. The road fund budget is almost, recommended budget is almost 2 million. We are not anticipating any need for transfers from capital in 2021, but we will need transfers in 2022 and on to be able to continue some of the projects that we need to do. The Topping Road project, the overlay piece of Topping Road is included in the road fund. The trail and stormwater costs for that same project have been allocated and split into the road and I'm sorry, into the Parks and Stormwater Fund. And then, of course, any grant reimbursement that we receive will be split according to the expenses also. And some projects or programs that are not included in the 2021 budget, deer management. We do not have anything at this point in there for deer management. We do have additional funds added for the anticipation of needing to pick up more dead deer that get killed on the road, et cetera, because of that. We won't do any traffic studies in 2021. So programs that were in that are in the 2021 budget that were deferred from 2020, the pavement marking and the road sealing. Pavement marking, I believe, was about 55,000, and the road sealing was 175,000. So those are just not going to be done in 2020. So we'll pick them up again in 2021. Some other reductions, we obviously still have snow removal in the budget. We could all wish for no snow this winter, but I don't think that's going to get us very far. But we did kind of budget for kind of the normal, not and maybe a little, little less than that. It's hard to find kind of a normal year, but anyway, we kept that as low as possible. Obviously, if we have more snow and more need, we're just going to have to request a supplemental appropriation for that. We've reduced some of the right-of-way, street right-of-way maintenance budgets. What we have had to include in the 2021 budget is $261,000 to give back the federal grants that we received for the Clayton Ballast project. So I think ending fund balances, end of 2020, we will be at about 846,000 because we didn't do some of those major projects we would have done. But then ending 2021, only 88,000, and 2023, 82,000. And I just point out that ending 2023 number at 82,000 does include transfers in both 22 and 23 from the capital fund. So it's not like this fund is still going to be able to support itself out in the future years, not with the projects that are anticipated. So the capital fund, again, as I mentioned, we don't see a need to move money out of there in 2021, but we will moving forward. Projects that we included in 2021 that we feel are critical is this upgrade to the citywide IT infrastructure. We have not been putting money into our computerized systems and our kind of overall structure, and that's beginning to take its toll on our abilities to operate. The police department building renovation was budgeted for 2020. This was part of kind of the overall plan for the municipal center. This was both the police department side and the conference room were the last phase of, I think, about a 4-phase project to totally renovate the municipal center. The police department was deferred from 2020. It is in the 2021 budget. We need to do the roof repairs. We received an insurance settlement on that. So we didn't do it in 2020. We will do it in 2021. It continues the police vehicle replacement schedule and includes additional funds for replacing our IT contract. We're going to have to go out to bid for 2021 for IT services. Some reductions, we reduced grounds care in 2021 and 2021, and also some other landscaping budgets were also reduced. So Tim Randick went through the contract and basically tried to pare down to the most critical and needed costs for the grounds care moving forward. And then some of the other landscaping budgets, replacement of trees, shrubs, etc., were cut. So deferrals to 2022 and beyond, the Public Works Maintenance Facility, we've been kicking that down the road for years. We'll continue to do that. The Municipal Center Conference Room renovations will push out to hopefully 2022. and some firehouse upgrades. So ending fund balances, here's where I estimate we're going to be at the end of 2020, 2021, and again, 2023. And these 2023 is assuming we'll be transferring funds out to the road fund. Parks and Stormwater Fund recommended budget 2.3 million. Again, the same, obviously, the same assumptions with Topping Road. Things that were removed from the 2021 budget that we normally would have done, the tree planting, Drace Park landscaping, Nature Explore upgrades. Things that were deferred from 2020 and put into the 2021 budget is a playground design to support a grant request that we will be doing, I believe, in 2022. That grant is worth about 300 and some thousand, I think, out of a $400,000 project. We have included fire and ice back in the budget. Budget, erosion controlling the Longview Trail over park trail ceiling. And I'm frozen up for some reason.
Asshole.
I don't have it. This is going to take me a minute. Well, maybe we won't do this back with. I think you have the sheets in the presentation. You may not have them right in front of you, but let me just verbally go over what else I had left here. We were on Parks and Stormwater. Just want to say some of the programs and projects that are included in the 2021 budget. The Topping Road we discussed, Mason Road Trail Phase 1, that's north of Clayton Road. I think up to about Highway 40. Drace Park parking lot repairs, Topping Road stormwater work, and some other stormwater projects. Fund balance there, ending fund balance for 2020, we estimate to be about 1.7 million, 2021, 1.4 million, and then 2023 down to 240,000. So you can see that we're going to be using the fund balance there. And I just did a quick overview of the other funds. The Public Arts Fund, we will close out and move the $211 that is in that fund to the Parks Fund. The auditors said that since those were not dedicated funds, we did not need to have them in a separate fund, nor should we have them in a separate fund. So any funds that go into the Parks and Stormwater Fund that are earmarked for kind of more art or community art projects, we will just track within the Parks Fund. We have the security and training funds. Those are also restricted use. And the Federal Equitable Asset Sharing Fund, which is also restricted use by certain law enforcement related expenditures. So that is kind of the very brief overview of the 2021 recommended budget. What I gave you just in paper form was more detail. The first couple pages I gave you were really the same as what was in the PowerPoint presentation. But then I gave you the summary spreadsheets for each department so that you can see for each department by line item, the actual 18 expenditures, the actual 19, the 2020 budget, the 2021 estimate, and the 2021 draft recommended budget. At this point, I think the best thing to do is to kind of give it back to you to see if you had specific questions that you would like to ask, or if you just want to review it and we get back together on November 5th. It's if you have questions now, great. If not, let me know what you'd like to do.
Yeah, this is Don.
Okay, just a moment, because I can't read body language, can't see hands. If you would, and Bob, do you have the whole screen in front of you?
I do.
You do, okay, and I don't. So like Randy put her hand up. Bob, could you acknowledge people?
Well, I'd be glad to.
Okay, so Randy, go ahead, start, and then I think Don, you had a question, so go
I
ahead.
got several questions as I was following along that I just wanted to ask. Can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first question was, you were holding some vacancies. Was there any plans to hire a director of public works, or is that being postponed?
Yes, Randy, we will advertise that position and hopefully have that filled beginning the first of the year.
Okay. Another question. I'm just going to go through my list real quick as when you're talking about snow removal, and then there was something called street right-of-way maintenance. What is street right-of-way maintenance?
The street right-of-way maintenance is just anything we have to do in the right-of-way. The city is responsible, as I understand it, for maintaining mowing if there are trees that fall into that area. Bob, you might know that picking up the dead deer along the road.
Yeah, actually the deer I think is separate, Pam, but it is, Randy, this is an excellent point that I did not realize. When the city accepts private streets and takes over maintenance, we're also accepting maintenance of the right of way, trimming trees, any damage that the trees do. So it's a big expense and a big obligation of the city financially and time-wise.
Well, if the subdivision has cul-de-sacs, I know our subdivision does cul-de-sacs with trees and things in it.
Not maintain any plantings or beautification, only our trees in the right of way if they need to be removed or trimmed. Good.
And as far as mowing, Bob, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but Bob, as far as mowing, do you have a sense of, do we typically mow every 2 weeks? Would we go to every 3 weeks, or is there a sense of what that means? How do we translate that?
Right. So there were some set schedules we had for mowing, say along Clayton Road in the parks, at City Hall, that all got reviewed by the staff and just tried to make adjustments where possible. So also this year, we cut back where there is irrigation on watering, just so we wouldn't have to mow as often.
So some of that will relate to time and or height of grass and weeds or whatever.
Correct, yes.
And that schedule will be tweaked accordingly.
Correct.
Okay.
Let me just continue. I'll keep asking questions real quick on my list. The IT contract, didn't we just hire somebody to do that?
So, Randy, we're currently in a cooperative agreement with the city of Chesterfield. However, their staff time is limited to provide our support. And we do have an older system that requires a lot of support. So we're going to have to go out and retain somebody else.
Okay, there's a new company. I don't know if you know much about it. I don't either, called iCloud. That's moving into the old accounting. Is it Reuben whatnot building in Town and Country here? Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? The old Business Journal building?
Yes, we are familiar with them. So they will receive the RFP.
And the other thing, the police body cams and video storage, will that be taken care of in the budget this year?
It is provided for, and they're close to going live with that.
Okay. And let me see if there's anything here. I guess fire and ice. I didn't, Prop B, let me just ask you, Prop B is included in here. I saw in the general fund detail budget, you do have funds for the police department in here.
I didn't hear that.
I didn't understand the question.
Oh, Prop B from the police, that'll be continuing, right? The support from Prop B for the police department.
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay.
yeah, the
And then
sales
fire-
tax.
Yeah, that'll be continued,
Yes.
right? Okay. And then the fire and ice could potentially be optional depending on where this virus is. That it may or may
Right.
not. Right, okay. Those were my questions. I just was doing it as we went along.
I think Don had a question.
Yeah, I have mine are more general. But if you look at slide 9, which kind of takes your budget expenses from 19 to 21, you know, you have a big dip in 20, but then you've actually, you know, your 2021 budget actually takes you a little bit higher, all the funds a little bit higher than 19. And I don't know if general that makes sense, given the situation we're in with the sales tax and the uncertainty around the economy. I would think we would take a more conservative approach on our 21 budget until we have a better feel for the impact of, you know, the impact of when things are going to return to normal. If you want to put quote, and I'll definitely put quotes around normal. So that's just one general comment. I think the line graph on slide 12 showing what's happened with the general fund projections is pretty scary looking. And then the other thing, I guess, on the grants, if I understood you right, you've kind of kept those out. But if you got a high degree of confidence that you're going to get some money, some of this 700,000 in, and I wasn't sure of how confident you felt about that. But then I think that should be reflected somewhere in here to give us a feel for the impact of that, and then if there's, I don't know if there's a possibility of receiving more funds in 21, but just, you know, show the impact of that, even if it's not certain. If you feel that, you know, it's fairly confident.
Yeah, Don, on the grants, I do have them reflected in the budget recommendation. I just didn't reflect it in the slide where I was comparing the revenues year to year, but definitely all of the revenue, or all of the grant revenue that we assume we will get, and that includes the 743,000, is in the recommended budget and are in all the budget summaries. It just wasn't in that slide where I was just showing you the difference in revenues between the couple years.
Okay, I don't see any other questions right at this moment. I would like to clarify, and Bob did send out something about the deer carcass pickup. And we do that on city streets now. We're asking people, right, Bob? We're asking people if it's on Mason and Conway and or the highway. We're expecting MoDOT or the county to pick up those carcasses. Now, private streets, are we picking up dead deer on private streets?
We do, and in yards, we do pick up deer wherever they are.
So that is one thing we're doing for individuals who would otherwise have that responsibility themselves. Okay, and I'm making that point because we've had many people say they don't get anything from Town and Country. And I want us and commissioners, whenever you see these points, and I miss them, please point them out, because I think that's key. We certainly saw that, heard that in discussions in the last 2 or 3 months, how people don't recognize what they really do, but how they benefit from our city personally. And then another question for that grant for the playground at Longview. What is the match ratio for that?
I think it's 80%. I think it's very high.
So it's an 80-20?
Yeah.
Okay, and those are the grants that make sense.
Right.
We're paying 20, right? We're not paying 80?
Correct.
Okay. Those are the grants that make sense. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
I have it at 80%.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. Pam, in 23, are you assuming that sales tax is back to the 2019 numbers, or are we still down in 23?
No, I think we'll be back up. I think we'll be back up to normal by 2022. And then I've even plugged in a little bit of growth in 2023. Back to kind of again, if there is a normal, back to kind of a normal growth in sales tax, which I figure is about 2%.
Good. I agree.
Oz has his hand up.
I just have a couple of questions. First of all, I'm a little confused on how this CARES grant works. I'm looking at page 10. Is this CARES grant a one-time deal, or does it carry forward for several years in the future? I always thought it was a one-time deal.
It's one time.
Okay, then why do we show 2023 fund balance with CARES grant? 2021 with CARES? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. No, that's just because it'll go into the fund. So if it doesn't go into, I just wanted to point out that if it doesn't go into, if we don't get it in 2020, then we're in, our fund balance will not be obviously as good as if we do get it. But it is a one-time, as far as we know, a one-time grant.
Okay, that's what I thought. Well, what's the probability of us getting the amount of money that you show in this presentation?
As far as I know, it's very good. Bob may have a different opinion.
So I agree. It's very good.
Okay. Another one, some of you are going to say, oh, there he goes again. Deer management. I personally believe the way I look at deer, I'll tell you how I look at deer. I look at deer as pests. I know they're beautiful and all that kind of thing, but I look at them as pests, and they do damage. They cause lots of problems, and to not do something to control this herd on an annual basis, I think is incorrect. So is it?
I will
Go ahead,
respond
Bob.
just briefly, Oz, and you're probably aware that the county has authorized a managed bow and arrow hunt in Queenie Park. It's the first time they've ever authorized this that I'm aware of. And they're going to allow 30 hunters beginning November 7th. We just received these details. And basically through the end of November, very controlled, very limited, managed by the Department of Conservation, but each of those 30 are allowed to take up to 3 deer. So if they got their max of 90, and as you know, Queenie is our biggest problem.
Right.
So we took 134 deer, I think, citywide last year, 80 or so coming out of Ward 2 near Queenie.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm looking at page 13 of the presentation. It says no budget for traffic studies. What are traffic studies? And I was looking back in the detail that we got, and I saw no line item for traffic studies. So I said, I don't know what that's even worth.
We conducted, the city partnered previously with some of the businesses such as like 141 in Clayton to undertake traffic study. If you ever had an issue at a location in the city that you needed professional services, that would be a traffic study, but we don't have any of those that we're recommending this year.
Yeah, those would be under the professional services line.
Oh, and one thing I would like to see before we're finished with all this budget is either a summary of the expenses, the types of expenses that we incur in connection with Town Square. Town Square, you can't pick out of this information that we receive. This is the amount of money the city's spending on Town Square. I'd like to know what that is in terms of the budget and in terms of our estimated actual for 2020. We've been told in the past that it's around $100,000 a year. Is that still a correct number? And have we done anything to reduce the amount of expenses for Town Square? I know there's certain what I'll call fixed expenses for Town Square. For example, the electricity. Okay, and I know that varies by the amount of the usage, but still, I think we're paying what, about $1,200 a month at least for electricity at Town Square. So I'd like to know what the expenses for Town Square are that you've got included in your budget.
Real quick, we are obviously taking all measures anywhere citywide to reduce expense, but we've paid close attention to Town Square. We've taken some recent measures to reduce utility expenses. But I think overall the budget for Town Square utilities, not category, but overall looks like for 2020, we're on target, what we budgeted and what the expenses are.
In total or just, I'm not.
In total.
I just threw out,
I
just threw out utilities as an example, Bob. That's a recurring monthly expense there. I know that. Plus, I'm sure the maintenance of the grounds and that kind of thing is too. I just want to make sure we have those expenses well under control.
Okay. I see Bob Aiken's hand up.
I've got a question from one of the other attachments. It showed general fund interest income actually more than doubling next year. It shows $36,000 for 2020, increasing to $80,000 in 2021. And is there an interesting story behind that, or?
No, you must be looking at, which fund are you looking at? Do you know which?
The general fund, the bottom says it's page 21, interest income.
So it's on the revenue sheet, right?
Yes.
The page numbers are not correct. I haven't updated those yet. No, the interest income has gone down. If you look at 2019, the actual we received there was almost 170,000.
Right.
And it's just, of course, dropped like a rock for 2020 because our overnight rates have gone from about 1.5% down to 0.05%.
But then we're budgeting for it to more than double in 2021.
Well, I think it's that might be overly optimistic. I'll look at that again, but I just did the new report. I'm trying to remember if I updated that. I'll look at it again, Bob. That's a good point. I may be overly optimistic with the 80,000. Yeah, it's just assuming we'll get a little bit better, but it obviously won't turn around that much.
Randy has her hand up.
Pam, I noticed on the next page, 23, it says 2021 budget boards and commissions, and it has like $30,000 in 2018 for fire and ice, but it doesn't have anything there for 2021. And I didn't know, you had indicated earlier in your slides that there would be an expense probably for fire and ice. Is that in a different place?
Yeah, we moved that in 2019 to the Park and Stormwater Fund.
Okay.
What kind? I've got some questions too.
Oz has his hand up.
You know, one thing I ran across that really surprised me. I'm looking at what I'll call the detailed budget, page 47. And that has to do with the capital improvements fund. And you've got budgeted in 2021, and there's also an estimate for 2020, but no budget. Principal payment on what?
It's our,
8,000?
we have a,
Go ahead, Pam.
we purchased tasers in 2019, and it actually ended up being, according to our auditors, it was really a lease because we're paying it over 5 years. So they required me to show it differently in the budget.
They call it a capital lease, don't they?
Right. Yeah. So instead of a purchase, it was a capital lease, and you'll see that for the next 4 years.
Okay, because it kind of surprised me. I didn't know what that was. What else? Well, if we have suggested changes to the budget, how do you want those handled? In other words, we're all here today, and I guess the only suggested change I would have right now, without more discussion and more analysis, would be deer management. But so if we have a suggested change like that, do you want that brought forward and voted on a one by each basis? How do you want this handled?
It seems like if we're going to do that, we should we should do it whenever you're prepared to make a recommendation to the board, it should include those changes. And I don't know if you want to do that today, or if you want to go ahead and have the November 5th meeting so you have more time to review it and come back with comments, and then the commission as a whole obviously would need to take those changes into consideration and build it into the recommendation that you prepare for the board.
I'd just like to add, I have talked to almost all of the aldermen about that issue, because Oz and I mentioned, we discussed that earlier this week. And I am, as always, I will be happy to take any Ways and Means recommendations to the board. I've gotten a feel from at least, I know of 6 of the other aldermen. There's one I haven't gotten back to. And the thought is, well, one said we don't have the money. It's not about the money. It's, to me, it's, we need to identify a need, and then you find the money, you prioritize it. Most people believe at this time, because of the bow hunting, that it would not be a problem to this year go ahead and see what happens, kind of look at the benefits or not that we would get from this bow hunting at Queenie Park. I'm told that this is where they all breed. Certainly Ward 4 has a significant problem along Conway, and Bob had put together some of the information of the efforts that went into trying to bait and get some deer last year, and Bob had said that that's where they really did focus, and that's where they had the minimum amount of, I believe, of return on investment of deer because of the size of the lots. I'm happy to do that. If we're going to make a change, I'm happy to do that to the board. Right now, most of the people, well, one is very happy that we wouldn't have the deer program. And then others are saying, at this point for this year, let's reassess. Again, I'm looking for the whole city. I also had the concern about Ward 4, and I think as far as Ward 4, we need to come up with some solutions to work on how we would address that. But again, whatever you all decide, I will move forward with it. Randy?
I just sort of think the fire and ice event might have potential to eliminate next year. I'm just not sure how popular something like that. I'm not sure why it was still included, just because it's a large grouping, and will people even be interested? To me, it has the potential to be something you can cut back on. And one other thing I'm just going to mention about Town Square is, are we still keeping on top of Bob Brinkman? Like, what's he doing? What's he doing? Do you contact him pretty regularly about filling that space? Or if a restaurant's not going to work there, what other ideas does his firm have for that spot?
Yes, Mr. Brinkman appeared before the board at the board's request to give an update. He continues to make efforts to secure a restaurant. The restaurant industry has not been eager recently with the COVID, but he continues through his brokerage firm, Pace Properties, to work on a restaurant.
I didn't know if there's a potential to think of other ideas to fill that slot, because otherwise it could be empty for quite some time. Yeah. It just might be something to bring up.
Investors, I think, when he appeared before the board. So
Sorry, Bob, I didn't catch that. What did you say he said before the vote?
He said if there were investors willing to invest in a restaurant, he would welcome that.
Okay.
Get your checkbook out, Hans.
Ms. Goldberg, you had a question?
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say I agree with Oz. I've seen before where we forego the deer management, and it really, really gets rough. The damage that's done, the accidents that happen, it gets bad very quickly, it seems.
Well, it's gotten as high as $200,000. I guess is the highest I've ever seen it that the city has spent on deer management. And I'm just afraid. I guess I'm willing to go along with the notion that this Queenie Park thing's going to help, but I don't know. We'll just have to see. But I just think we ought to budget something. Even a minimum of $50,000 might be something, and I think the city can afford it.
Okay.
Which getting back to the word afford, I'm going to jump to the general fund after we finish this deer discussion.
Okay, Bob, you want to, and I might, yeah, I'm off. And I'm sorry, I keep going on and off mute because if there's too much noise, I'm trying to mute myself. But Bob and I did talk, and if it's going to be in, Bob had mentioned that needs to be, the baiting would be starting and now or soon. Bob, you want to clarify that?
We would need obviously to notify White Buffalo we contract with, and then we need to start securing sites from the residents.
True.
There's a lot of work that goes into it. The baiting, we have to purchase the corn, we have to arrange for the food pantry, the processing. There's a lot of work. So we would definitely need to know in advance of that.
And do we have an expectation of a minimum?
I don't know. I'll check with White Buffalo and see, because they do have to travel here, and see what minimum they would be able to do.
Which brings up a question, Bob. Looking at the history of the deer situation here in this town, they've been around a little while. I want to know who knows anything about deer in this city anymore? You the only one? Because when all this started, Bill Cooling, he was an alderman. I guess he was Ward 2. I don't know. He was the self-designated expert in this area. He did a lot of good work for the city, put together policies, procedures, and Gary helped him. Well, Bill's gone, Gary's gone. Then Fred Malin Smith took it over. He's gone. So who knows anything about deer in this town anymore, and who cares?
Tom Thousand on our staff is very, very, very up to date. He is from a staff level managed this program.
Okay. Because Gary did an excellent job while he was here.
Mr. Perot has his hand up.
Question for Pam. The fire and ice, did you say that the budget moved accounts, changed accounts?
Yes, in 2019, we moved it out of the general fund from boards and commissions into the parks and stormwater fund. They're the ones who manage it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And my recollection of that is, help me out, Pam, that net cost to the city of that was about $10,000. Although the event costs around $25,000.
Right.
And a bulk of the money, over 50% of the money, came from contributions. Let's say Marie DeVille was a big contributor, and a few other businesses in town. That's my recollection of how fire and ice work.
Correct. And I'll give you the total expenditures here in a moment.
And while you're looking for that, it kind of brings up the question, parks and stormwater, they have several different kinds of programs going on in parks and stormwater. Fire and ice is one of them. There may be a couple of others. But when we look at the detail of the budget on page 52, it's done by natural account, which I understand that makes sense. I'd like to see, if possible, how that budget breaks down on a program basis, how much money we're spending for, let's say, fire and ice, and some other types of programs that we have there. That's just my preference.
We have some of that broken down. It's the fire and ice is budgeted now under the public relations account, which is at 5095 40020. We have 25,000 in the expenditure budget, and that it varies, of course, over the years, but back as far as I have it in the budget book from 2012, it's been 11,000, and then up and down different years. One year it was actually 37,000, and but mostly around the 25. What I don't have right here, obviously, are the offsets to that, whatever donations we got in. So some of the other projects, programs, you might say, I don't have them all individually budgeted out, but we have things like the parade, the holiday boutique. Some of those, the holiday boutique, I think, balances itself out with revenues. You have Arbor Day, Fall Festival, art, wine, and music.
We know how much we spend on each one of those programs? We have records on that?
No, I would have to dig that out from the detail.
Okay, that's what I figured.
And I think I agree with Oz. I think those are entities I would like to see where part of a program is put one place and part of it another. I would think if we're looking at something happening at, as those things go, I would like to know the full cost. And only once you know the full cost, then that's when you judge whether or not that is something that is what we want to do. So no, I appreciate that sentiment. And at some point I've talked to Ann Nixon, and she has said that certainly that the programs like for kids tennis or various things, that she's told me that if there isn't enough fees for people, then those things are canceled. But for all those types of programs, certainly within parks, I'd like to see at some point the full accounting for what the dollar value is to the city. Because I think we're at that point.
Well, we have, I don't have the individual costs in the budget on most of those, but all of the costs will be within this budget. What's not obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, is that the revenue comes into a revenue account, and then the expenditures, of course, are in the expenditure account. And I think what you're looking for is the net of those two. That would just take somebody going through, the costs and identifying each cost within this particular account and adding them up and giving you the net, comparing it to the revenue. But the expenses are all in one account for the parks programs. And
but Ann could probably be more specific. Wouldn't that be part of her job, to assess the expenses and, you know, what we're paying out for each program? Is that something we could get from Ann?
I really don't think so. I mean, she would have obviously the general idea on those programs where certainly where it's particular programs for particular people, you know, and those programs will not go forward unless the participants pay the cost of the program. Those she would cancel if she did not get enough participants. And yes, she would know that. But for the programs that we do citywide, she knows approximately what she's budgeted and she would have an idea of the cost, but she would have to come to us and say, okay, give me a list of the costs of each one of those programs. And then what I would have to do would be to go back to each one of the accounts and try and split it out by cost. And that's all doable. It just takes time because it's a manual process. I don't have a system that I can plug in a number and say, give me all the expenses for this project, because we don't have project accounting.
Well, that's a discussion we can have at some other time, I guess, but it would be nice if we could know the cost of some of these things relative to the benefit we're getting. That's my opinion.
Okay. Do we
May I make
have
another
any-
comment? May I make
Go
another
ahead.
comment? I'm looking at the Parks and Stormwater Fund again. And we have $594,000 budgeted in 2021 for trail construction and improvements. Now, if we're in a tough financial condition, why do we need to push this ahead? In other words, I moved when I came into this town 30 years ago, shortly thereafter, the idea of the trails came up. And here we are 30 years later, and I don't know what we've really accomplished, but we've accomplished something, I know, but it just tells me, well, it's not that critical a deal. And to me, it's not a high priority expense, but that's to me. I'm sure that other people, especially the younger people, they would say, boy, am I wrong on that one. But I'm saying to myself, oh, 594, and here again, you're going to think I'm harping on deer, but if you wanted to save, if you wanted to cover the cost of the deer, you cut the trails down by 50,000, if the deer is a doable number at 50,000. But just for talking purposes, you cut the trails down by 50,000. I realize it's in a different fund. So if you cut the trails cost down by 50,000, and you say, well, I'm going to spend 50,000 more over in the road fund, but then you've got, if you cut the trails down in the park fund, you've got an excess of $50,000 of fund balance. You could just transfer that over to the road fund.
No, you can't.
Says, no, you can't do that.
No.
And there are certain restrictions on how that works. Would you please explain those? In other words, you can go one way with certain funds and another way. In other words, I can't go, if I spend money in the general fund on a project in the road fund,
That's okay.
I can't get that money back from the road fund, can I?
No, you can use general fund money for any city expense. Okay, that's
Right.
kind of an open fund. But the road fund, the state statutes define what you can spend the road fund on.
Excuse me,
And-
does the state statute, picking up with Mike's comment or somebody's comment, does the state statute say you can spend it on deer?
We believe it does. Otherwise, we wouldn't have that expense in there
Okay,
because it has to do with the road safety.
okay.
And The Parks and Stormwater Fund is exactly the same way. That sales tax is dedicated to specific expenses that fall under either parks type operations, which are parks, trails, parks maintenance, or the stormwater. So again, those funds are restricted. We can move in general fund into any of those funds to support them, but it can't go back the other way.
Why not?
Because
Why can't I
it
go back
has,
the other?
because
I can make a loan, can I? I can make a loan from the general fund to the park fund, right?
you mean from the park fund to the general fund?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah,
I
we can
do that as well. I
we can
can't
do-
transfer expenditure money, but I can make loans between funds, correct?
correct, but we would have to pay it back.
Oh, I understand that.
Okay.
I see
Okay.
Jeff has his hand up, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I have to drop off. I have a business meeting I have to attend, but I think this has been very good conversation and interaction of exchange of information. And I'd like to suggest that we go ahead and have the November meeting and continue the conversation.
Okay.
But, okay, and I agree with that. And that's just scheduled for another week or two, right? Or 3 weeks. If we were, again, then Bob had said, if we are going to be able to anticipate strongly that this is going to be, we have actions that need to start occurring, correct, Bob?
Well, I'll check with, if we're talking specifically about deer management, I'll check with White Buffalo and see their flexibility. But as you stated, Madam Chair, the final decision obviously comes to the Board of Aldermen on any of the budget expenditures.
Well, I still am confused and uncertain about how we handle suggested budget changes, okay? Do we bring the changes back to the committee on November the 6th, and then the committee votes on them?
That's
And
what
then
I would
we say,
recommend.
okay.
That's what Ms. Wright's stated.
Is that the way she wants? Okay, but then she's got to take those changes that come up at that committee meeting and put those into some kind of a financial format to say, okay, this is where we started. Here are the changes and here's where we are now. She can't do all that at the meeting. She's going to have to do that after the meeting and then come back to the committee and say, okay, this is what your changes have wrought. Okay. So does that mean we have another meeting, meeting after the 5th?
If there's a specific recommendation at this time, I don't see a harm in voting to make any additions or
oh yeah,
suggestions.
but I'm saying we still have more time to study this thing or think about it. And
what about if we were to submit emails?
How you want this handled? Pardon?
What if we were to submit emails between now and the 5th on questions? And I mean, my general comment is just, I think the budget's too high. I think rolling, as I said, to kick it off early on. I think the Board of Aldermen is going to have a concern showing that much increase in spending from 2020. But I can put that in an email and with some ideas of some specific suggestions and reductions. But
I was going to make exactly the same suggestion. Could we email maybe Sue and Pam if we have specific ideas, and then they gather that together and we review it on November 5th?
Mm-hmm. I think that would be helpful to have that in advance. And please be as specific as possible so that I can figure out make sure I have some dollar amounts. Because, if you want to see some reductions, tell me what it is that you see that you would recommend that we reduce.
Because I've got another one I think we ought to increase, or a question about one we could possibly increase. I personally think that this trail stuff is way too high. But that's, and where do we stand on those? And I know I'm changing the subject a little bit. I like the idea. That's the way we're going to have to do what Don and Hans suggested. Is we're going to have to give you information before the meeting, so the November 5th meeting, so you can plug it into your financial format of some sort and say, okay, this is what the results are of your suggested changes. Then we go back and we look at that. We say, hey, maybe we don't like those suggested changes. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand that. And so if you need more detail in order to make your suggestions, let me know what it is that you need. I really don't want to give you more data than you need, because I think it might just confuse things. But if you have specific areas that you kind of hone in on and say, these are areas that maybe we could reduce, then I can give you whatever detail I have for you to see if what to help you make your recommendation. If you're looking at the trails, well, if you look at the 5-year capital plan that I sent out with this, that does show the trail projects on there that we have budgeted.
I know, I've looked at it. It's $1 million bucks. That's a lot of money.
I need to
Pam,
sign off now as well. It's 10 o'clock. So
yeah,
me
me too. And I think we lost Sue, perhaps. I don't see her on, so.
Right.
But before you guys go, let me just, shouldn't you give us a deadline by which you want all this stuff before the November 5th meeting? So what would that deadline be?
Let me look at the calendar. Sorry.
And I'm not saying you have to have it all plugged into this format that you've given us, all this detail. You can just take the existing fund balances and just say, these are the adds and these are subtracts.
Right, and that's what I'll do. So our meeting is on Thursday, the 5th. So if you have recommendations to me by, say, Tuesday, the 3rd.
Bad day. That's election day.
Well, then Monday, how's that?
Monday, and then hopefully we'll have very good news on Tuesday.
Yeah. So
hopefully we'll have any news on Tuesday.
Well, yeah.
We'll have some news, but
that is the good news. Some news is good news.
So Monday, November 2nd.
Okay.
And I will do kind of a summary of those recommended changes and show then the effect on the bottom line of the fund and the fund balance. And then you can incorporate that into your recommendation.
Perfect. I do have to jump. Thank you, Pam. Thank you very much for everything, all the good details.
I got to go too.
Nice seeing you all. Thank you for your time.
All righty.
Did we have a motion to adjourn real quick?
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Where did Sue go?
Sue is on the line. She asked me to ask for a motion to adjourn. I've got her muted.
I move for adjournment.
Thank you. Motion, Mr. Aiken.
I guess I'll second it.
Okay, thank you all.
I have a few more things I'd like to discuss, but anyway.
I got a question before everybody hangs up. And this is sort of off topic, and it's something maybe after the budget cycle's done. But I went through and I read a lot of commentary that people were saying against increasing the property tax. And there's a lot of education that really needs to be done, because people were saying that there are no services or that they pay a large amount already to property tax for town and country. So I think we need to educate them long term. And there were some documents that we have from earlier meetings that I thought would be helpful. Like Bob had one, or I don't know if it was Pam, with all the property taxes that people, you know, all the components of people's property tax. And then maybe saying, it was this one from our July 30th meeting. It was the testing authority and composite tax rate. And then putting down there at the bottom, town and country, 000, you know, some way, and maybe perhaps putting it in a format online, like Pam did, where she's on the side and has her charts and her presentations here. And then Bob also did the revenue scenarios June 19th, where it explained the background of the property tax, you know, and maybe combining something like that into a video, and Pam or Bob explaining it on the side, but eventually trying to educate people, because a lot of the comments were really incorrect and a misunderstanding. So it's just something to think about in the future after the budget cycle.
Well, before we're finished with this discussion, I want to make this comment, Bob, and everybody else. 2 meetings ago, when they brought up the property tax, I sat on Zoom and listened to that meeting. And one of the subjects that was brought up was the need to educate the public on what's going on in this city financially. We have not done a very good job of that. We've also always said, oh, everything is great, and all of a sudden it isn't. And then we want to raise property taxes, and people really don't understand what's going on financially in this city and why we need the reserves and all this kind of stuff, okay? And there was a discussion about that, and there was an agreement that more education was necessary. And I was going to ask Bob, who's in charge of educating the public